let me think here. Okay, and so just in time for me to be getting into a big classic rock phase, The Darkness came out, and they were all about recapturing classic rock, you know, the 70s kind of feel, more so than the 60s. But I loved The Darkness at that time. In a place like where I live, you know, if you like The Darkness, I mean, people thought you were, if you liked anything weird, I was already a weirdo because just because of the stuff that I already liked, you know, and I had long hair. That made me a bit of an outcast already. But yeah, people hated The Darkness. But that was the first concert I went to see, was The Darkness. And, you know, Permission to Land. Go listen to Permission to Land, you know, start to finish, and tell me if you find one flaw on that album. I mean, that is a solid album straight through. It's got 10 or 12 badass songs on it. You know, good songwriting, kind of humorous, you know, lyrically, and some tight rhythms, good riffs, harmonies, and everything. It's a great album. Some of their later albums didn't really live up to that one, but they have a really good song called The Last of Our Kind, and it came out probably, you know, 5 or 6 years ago at this point, if not longer, but that's a really good song, The Last of Our Kind. What else? Oh yeah, so listening to the White Stripes and Jimi Hendrix and everything made me more curious about the blues. And so I kind of started listening to a little bit of the blues, and I never really got to the point where I could, you know, sit here and list off, you know, such and such album by Muddy Waters and, you know, this and that. But whenever I hear that kind of music, I like it. There was actually a period where my grandfather, when he was still alive and still, you know, had some pep in his step, him and my grandmother were, you know, they were checking out the local blues music scene, and they would take me and my cousin to go see, like, bands at, like, little festivals and stuff like that. And at the time, I didn't even realize how cool it was that I had grandparents who were taking me to see, like, blues shows, you know what I mean? But I did enjoy myself, and I do have good memories of those times. So that was another side of my musical brain that was developing at the time. And that's really how I learned to improvise on the guitar. Is I learned the blues scale, and I learned about how the blues formula of the chord progression that they use in most blues songs, and that's kind of how I learned to work my way up and down the scales, and improvise melodies and stuff like that. And then also kind of branching out from the 60s rock and the blues stuff. That's how I got into, like, folk music. My grandpa, the same grandpa, he was like Bob Dylan's biggest fan ever, and so he kind of turned me on to Bob Dylan. For a while it wasn't really clicking, but then once I kind of was like checking out the other 60s rock, then the Bob Dylan kind of started to make more sense, and I listened to a lot of Bob Dylan. A whole lot of Bob Dylan. And let's see, I got into Donovan a little bit, not really. Around that time too, I stumbled across Devendra Banhart, you know, and he was doing like folk mixed with indie rock kind of stuff, and I thought he was badass. I thought Devendra Banhart was so fucking cool, and I still love a lot of his music. But like, you know, Cripple Crow, I listen to that over and over and over again, and then, you know, and he's somebody, I mean, even his albums he came out with, his old ones were good before that, where it was more lo-fi acoustic. Cripple Crow was good, and then he had a few more after that were really good. Trying to think of the names of them. But they had songs like Baby, Can't Help But Smiling, I Want to Be Your Lover. He had some good songs. He kind of started making some weird music at one point that I wasn't as into, but it was still good. You can't really say it's not good. But let me think, what else was I listening to? Okay, so somewhere around that period is when I rediscovered the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You know, they had kind of been off my radar for a while. When By the Way first came out, I was excited, but I didn't really dig it that much because it was a little too complex and a little too sophisticated for my taste, honestly, at the time. But sooner or later, I remembered how great the Red Hot Chili Peppers were. And, you know, a lot of people talk shit about them and say, you know, they just sing about California and whatever else. But when somebody tells me they don't like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I'm just going to be honest. That really makes me question who you are as a person. You know what I mean? It just questions your integrity. I'm not going to lie. I can understand, because most people have only heard Give It Away and Snow, which are good songs, but if you really want to understand the Chili Peppers, you got to listen to the full album of Californication, By the Way, Stadium Arcadium, you know, Blood Sugar Sex Magic. But this is like when Stadium Arcadium came out, and I was blown away by that album. I mean, it was like a 2-disc album full of awesome songs. You know, Frashani was just ripping it up the whole time. I mean, you know, if you know anything about Frashani, up until that point, he was known for being more of a minimalistic guitar player. You know, artistic chords and little melodies and stuff, but then on Stadium Arcadium he came out just ripping solos, like just and using some sweet guitar tone, and like all the songs were so good. And that's about the time too that I started getting into his solo albums, and he's got a really diverse discography of solo albums. I mean, his early stuff was like really lo-fi, like avant-garde, really out there type of stuff. And then you know, my favorite albums by him are When Shadows Collide with People and To Record Only Water for 10 Days. At least kind of during that period, those are my favorites. And his newer stuff is really good too. But you know, that's kind of where the seed got planted in my mind to kind of make some of the music that I make now. because that was the first time I'd ever heard anybody take like drum machines and synthesizers and stuff like that, making almost like techno music, and then also playing guitar solos on top of that. So, you know, that's kind of the formula of what I do now, even though that's not what he does anymore so much. But that also was my first introduction to the world of electronic music, which to me as a classic rock guy at that time was like a taboo, but opened up some doors. And that's all the time I have for now, but I'm gonna pick up in my next video with the Mars Volta. Alright, see you later.